stuff. Yeah, 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 yeah,
Appreciate your patience. It's 6:04. I call the meeting to order. We're going to take a moment of silence, and Mr. Sandoval will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance today. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Ms. Pingarelli is on her way. She'll be here in about 15 minutes, and Governing Board, as a result of the agenda, and we have some guests, I would like to make some recommended changes. My first, I'm there. Yes. My first request is to move employee evaluation after the administrative appointments following that Foundations Phonics program, and then the presentation of the preschool program. There will be a request to move an item from the consent agenda item, so I will address that when we get there. Governing Board, are you okay with those changes? Okay. All right. Excellent, and I spoke to Kim, so she's prepared. Excellent, so we'll move forward with the recommended changes and proceed with recognitions. Staff recognitions, Ms. Airy? Right, and we're going to wait for our superintendent. Would you like to, please? Here.
Thank you, Mrs. Sejas Martinez. I've got a couple of things. First of all, are we good? I'd like to welcome our new officer who's here tonight from Glendale. Okay, and I don't know if he can hear me, but that's
Making his way.
okay. Thank you, Detective Stepp, for being here. We'll try to be orderly and get you out early. So thank you for joining us. Appreciate you. Thank you. I also want to tell you the National School Athletic Coaches Association selected Tim Beck from Ironwood as high school recipient of the 2019 National Soccer Coach of the Year. Big honor, and thank you, Tim, for all you do. Big deal, and I don't know if you saw this, Centennial teacher Melissa Grimscheid was awarded the 2019 American Modeling Teachers Association Malcolm, this is a mouthful, Wells Leadership Award winner. She was also appointed as a master teacher policy by the American Association of Physics Teachers and the American Institute of Physics. Unbelievable, big deal award, and we're really proud of Melissa. So, Melissa, thank you for all you do, and thank you for what you do at Centennial. Appreciate you. And that's what I have while we're trying to fix us. This is like, I saw this last night.
So are we saying that my mic is the only one that works? And
Oh,
Miss
that is a-
Underhill? Miss
that is
Underhill,
such
does
a
yours
danger.
work?
Mine works.
All right, we're good. Oh, okay. Oh. Okay. Mine looks yellow.
Yeah, that's what mine was.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your patience. Well, that's great to hear about the science. That way we can have big changes in our district as we move forward.
And you'll see that there are curricular changes in science, and I know Judy and her team and Melissa are right up there doing it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, it's not the mics. It's the monitors.
Mine's good now.
Okay.
I know that.
Let me turn on Judy. Oh, mine works now as well.
Okay, we're good? Yes.
I didn't even notice, actually, because I had the paper copy, so I can scribble on. Okay, well, moving right ahead with board recognitions. We'll go ahead and start with Miss Underhill.
I don't have anything tonight, thank you.
Mr. Sandoval?
I don't have any this evening.
Ms. Doan?
I don't have anything either.
And I do not as well.
Middle of the summer.
Okay, moving right along. Number 5, public comment addressing governing board items not included in the agenda at 5.1. At this time, I don't see any green slips. Do we have any additional slips over there? Nope, okay. Moving right along to the consent agenda item. Governing board members, are there any items that need to be pulled? Ms. Underhill? No. Mr. Sandoval? Ms. Doan?
I'd like to pull 6.9.
Okay, I'll second that. And per our discussion, can we move that after the administrative appointments? Thank you very much. Excellent. All right, I move to approve the consent agenda item excluding 6.9. We have a motion and a second. Motion passes 4-0 and 1 absent. Moving on to 8.1, consideration of administrative appointments. Dr. Carter Davidson. It's not.
You guys should press the green button and then it turns on. Hey, how about that? Awesome. Okay, well, let's start with this agenda item. President Sam Martinez, members of the board, Superintendent Thompson, I'm here tonight to simply ask for a recommendation on our behalf from administrators to name some school-based administrators as well as district-level administrators to serve during the 1920 school year.
Thank you very much, Dr. Davidson. And just to recognize the public, the administration goes through a process and the recommendation is made to the board and the board approves the contract information. So I do need a motion for the recommendations and they were included in an email sent to us. The administrative appointments.
I move that we approve the consideration or approve the administrative appointments.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Sandoval and a second by Ms. Underhill. Motion passes 4-0, 1 absent. Dr. Davidson, my request is if you would go through the ones that are not here and then save the one that is here and we can have conversation.
Yes, ma'am.
Please.
Thank you, Mrs. Seja Martinez. I'll share with you that the way it has worked this year, certainly the one I'll start with as Executive Director for Elementary Education, that move was an internal hire, which then allowed other opportunities to present themselves, which are the ones I'll read and then introduce an individual in the near future. We would start with the nomination or the recommendation for Mr. Dale Schuff to be appointed to the position of Executive Director for Elementary Education for the 1920 school year. Mr. Schuff currently serves as the principal of Cheyenne Elementary. Mr. Schuff has served the Peoria Unified School District since 1996 and has been in roles of teacher, curriculum specialist, as well as assistant principal. Mr. Schuff earned a bachelor's degree from Grand Canyon University and a master's degree in ed leadership from Northern Arizona University. So with that movement, we were able to recommend Mrs. Rebecca Slater to serve as principal of Cheyenne Elementary for the 1920 school year. Rebecca currently serves as the assistant principal of Cheyenne Elementary. Mrs. Slater has served in our district in the roles of teacher and assistant principal and has been here since 2006. Mrs. Slater earned a Bachelor of Arts degree in elementary ed from Arizona State University and a master's degree in administration and leadership, also from ASU. Lastly, and tonight, we'd like to recognize and honor Miss Lisa Reese as she be appointed to the position of principal of Paseo Verde Elementary School for the 1920 school year. Lisa currently serves as the assistant principal of Paseo Verde and has done so since 2014. Ms. Reese has served in previous roles of teacher, achievement advisor, and principal within other school districts. Ms. Reese has earned a Bachelor of Science degree in elementary ed from Northern Arizona University and a master's degree in educational leadership from Northern Arizona University. And I'll share with you before Ms. Reese comes up, she is stepping into some big shoes there as Mr. Stutzman has been a longtime Peoria employee, and he is choosing to help serve at Frontier Elementary School. So we're excited for Ms. Reese and her opportunity. So Lisa, if you want to come on up, congratulations. And I'll speak to that in a second. So.
Okay. President Seja Martinez, members of the board, Superintendent Palis Thompson, I just want to say thank you for this opportunity. For the past 5 years, I have felt that Paseo Verde has become my home, and I am extremely excited to serve in this new role and take them to the future. So thank you.
Thank you very much, and I'll go ahead and start with governing board comments. Ms. Underhill?
I'm just so glad that you're able to do that and step into those new shoes, and it's wonderful to have you and have had your history there. So thank you very much, and thanks to your family.
And that's a great point, Ms. Underhill. Do you mind introducing your family?
I can. So this is my sister, Heather, my father, Bill Rose, my mother, Louisa Rose, my husband, Ryan, who also works here in the district, and then my two boys who also attend Paseo Verde. We have Jackson and Logan, which is tonight is his birthday. So.
Oh, happy birthday. Thank you very much, and thank you, family. Mr. Sandoval?
Yeah, so I know you said thank you to everyone for this opportunity, but thank you, for really putting your name in the hat and your willingness to, take on this role that, will most likely put you in a vulnerable position, right? But that's how we grow, and that's certainly a testament to true leadership is the vulnerability and being humble. So thank you for that, and thank you for your continued commitment to PSD and all the humans that go through our district and that we put in a position to be successful. So thank you, and thank your family. Congratulations to all of you on Ms. Reese's success.
And Ms. Doan?
Well, congratulations, and I would just like to say, I have a question about how you handle internal issues when there's dissatisfaction among teachers.
Well, I listen. That's the first and most important is I listen to both sides and see if there's some way that we can come to an agreement. And, way back in my years when I was a teacher, I was a peer mediator counselor. And so I learned a lot of peer mediation skills, which amazingly come in handy when you're dealing with teachers as well. So we usually try to come to a happy consensus.
And do you consider your skills very good if a person is critical of you?
Very good. So I was in a role as a principal previously, and through my years, you always have parents that are upset, and you have staff members that are upset, and I've always been told that I remain very calm when everybody else feels like they should be exploding. So I think that's one of my best traits is that I'm very calm. Even though inside I might be blowing up a little bit, I can remain calm in all situations.
That's good. When you're in a position of leadership, there are always people that are going to be unhappy. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to get a touch base with you on how that worked for you, and if you would be able to work with that well.
Absolutely.
So
I have some pretty big shoes to fill, but I think I'll do okay.
So I have a question. The governing board, how can we support you? You obviously have a lot of years of experience from your lens and from your spouse's lens. Mm-hmm. What can we do as a governing board to continue to support you and your peers at the site levels as administrators?
I really do think that our staff would love to see we welcome you guys to come out and visit Paseo at any time, and I think they really would enjoy to see your face and to see what's going on in the classroom, so they have that connection.
Well, thank you for the invite.
Come on out.
And Miss Linda Pellis Thompson, I'm sure we can get those in the books. Excellent. Well, good luck.
All right, thank you.
Wish you wisdom and a lot of love from the district office.
Thank you.
Thank you. So generally, families is when you get to exit. If you would like to go celebrate, please, by all means, or you can stay and join us for the rest of the governing board meeting. Yep. And celebrate birthday with cake. Thank you. Excellent. Perfect timing. Moving all right along to the next agenda item, we've requested a consent agenda item 6.9 to be pulled, and it has been placed as 8.2 to consider and if deemed wait, that's not the right one. Excuse me. 6.9 job order contract dollar amount approval for the Sunrise Mountain High School's Arts Center and Sunrise Mountain High School G building classroom renovations. I do believe we have some questions from the governing board, and it'll be just a moment. Ms. Doan, since you requested, would you like to start, or I know Ms. Pengarelli had some questions as well? We'll let her start. Okay.
Thank you. I'm not quite settled in, but I apologize for being late, but it was unforeseen.
Take your time.
Ms. Stone, do you sure you don't want to start yet? Okay. I am. I just need to pull up what I need to look at. Well, the only reason I had wanted to pull this one is because I had voted no. Sorry.
Quick point of order, the item you pulled from.
Correct. Did I say 6.8?
You said to pull 6.9.
Right.
And you approved everything else.
Correct.
Is 6.9 it was the,
Yeah, job order contract. Wait.
Already approved 6.9.
Okay, so then the hard copy that I have is,
yeah, the hard
Not-
copy
it's
I
not
have
the
is
one-
6.9.
yes, the hard copy that, you want, show me. This is the one that was given to you, right?
Didn't print it, I should have printed it out.
Right, 6:10?
Yeah, that's what
This was 6,
Okay,
You asked to pull 6.9.
oh, because we were looking at the hard copy.
We were looking at what was given,
Yeah. To you, delivered to you, so.
yeah, so this was an
So is there a
older
way to address it, or no, it's done?
copy. If not,
Okay,
You could address any item from the agenda.
okay.
But just for clarity purposes, ratification of the IGA between Maricopa. That's the only thing that hasn't been approved yet from.
Okay, so that's not what I have on my hard copy.
so the name of the game is to print a new agenda right before
Yes,
the board meeting. Because it's just been switched around is all.
yeah.
It's been changed. What I have on, an older copy is 6.9, but I have no problem. Thank you.
Do we need to approve?
Yes.
At some point, 6, you need to approve the ratification of the.
Perfect. So, perfect. So then what I'll do is I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the 6.9 ratification of the intergovernmental agreement between Maricopa County by and through the Maricopa County School Superintendent and Peoria Unified School District for election services.
Second.
And we have a second by Ms. Underhill. And then we'll revisit 6.10. Perfect. Okay, so go ahead and vote, please.
Can we do a voice vote? I am not logged in yet. My apologies.
Sure.
Okay.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay.
We can do that with one here.
Motion passes. Ms. Doan, was that a yes? Okay. It passed unanimously, and Board, we apologize for the misunderstanding. We're going to go back to 6.10, job order contract dollar amount during 10.3 to readdress, 10.1 to readdress agenda items. Okay, moving forward. We had requested to move 8.3, the employee evaluation tool, Dr. Carter Davidson. Sorry, I just don't want to get confused, so I don't want to look at this anymore.
All right, the microphone is on, so that's good. President Seja Martinez, members of the board, Ms. Powell Thompson. Tonight, Ms. Marla Hobbs, as you can see, and I are here to review our current observation tool used by our certified staff, in particular our teachers, and we'll also discuss slightly the evaluation process. I'll go ahead and advance the slide here for us. You can see the agenda tonight is really to give you a little bit of history into the evaluation framework that has existed here in Peoria Unified, to, again, look at the current or discuss a little bit about the current tool, our hopes for changes, and then maybe some next steps that we would take into the future. And by the way, as I speak, feel free to interrupt any time if you have questions or things that are catching your eye, okay?
Thank you.
As always, we've really tried over the last few years to tie what we do into our strategic plan. Tonight's conversation about observation and evaluation, I believe, could probably transcend any one of those four categories, but for tonight's conversation, I'd ask you to have the lens of student success, that we believe the conversation we bring to you tonight is with the idea and that we can improve our classroom instruction, in turn improving student achievement. This slide here talks a little bit about the past and the evaluation framework that has existed. Please note that the framework that I speak of was governed by the State Board of Education and really encompassed not just the evaluation process itself, the outcomes, but also the tools that were allowed to be used. And you can see that many years ago in 2011, the framework was put into place. Some key items that came from that you've been aware of and have probably seen are the performance labels that are given to teachers, that the items that were selected, in some cases mandated by the state board, were research-based, that student data had to be used in the observation process as well as in the evaluation in its totality, and also that there was an accountability measure there for teachers. In Peoria, the observation tool and the framework that we use for teacher observation was sponsored or I guess done through the Charlotte Danielson framework. And you can see through the list that I put there on the slide that that framework has been built into all of our evaluation or observation tools, I should say. So we really tried over the years to have some alignment between the observation tools that we currently use today. In terms of the evaluation model, again, I mentioned just the slide before, the effectiveness labels that are there, but also for our certified employees, so for those people we're talking about tonight, our teachers, we have the domains that are very specific to the to the behaviors that are being measured on behalf of our teachers. We have professional expectations that are measured and given a score. Right now, our teachers go through a self-assessment where they basically work with our principals and our leaders to talk about where they believe they land on the evaluation tool. There's ongoing reflection, and also we have a thing called a SLOW. And some of you have served as our educators, so you understand that, the student learning objective. And that's an opportunity for our teachers to reflect upon what they're charged to do, what their data says, and ultimately set a goal as well as a measurement that by the end of their evaluation process, they can work with their leader, their principal, their assistant principal to talk about how their kids have performed. And as you can see, that all goes together to, at the end of the year, as part of the summative evaluation process, we have 4 labels that staff receive, whether it's ineffective, developing, effective, or highly effective. You might be wondering, and I know I did send an email out with a certain data set, so I'd like to just revisit that with you tonight in regards to the rationale for possible change. Right now, across the last 3 school years, our certified employees that go through this process, 99% of them receive evaluation labels, effectiveness labels of either effective or highly effective. That has been a consistent trend for at least the last 3 years. I'll share with you, we're not that far off from the state's evaluation data. As part of our Association for School Personnel, we get a little bit of that data, and I'll share with you across the state for the year 16-17, it was 93% that were seen as effective or highly effective. And in the year 17-18, it was 94%. So our data doesn't necessarily say that we're far off, but I'll share with you if our goal is to improve student achievement, I believe we have some work we can continue to do in regards to the observation tool and ultimately the process. So I'm getting prepared, Governing Board, to turn it over to Mrs. Hobbs to speak about the tool and the process, the areas we're wanting to move forward in. I can certainly stand now for questions if there's anything that you would like to ask while I'm here, or we'll be back up together in just a few minutes. Okay, all right. I'll step aside, Marla.
All right, good evening, President Seja Martinez, members of the Governing Board, Mrs. Pallas Thompson. At this time, I'm going to go through the new changes for the 1920 school year in the area of Certified Teacher Observation Tool. I will be speaking tonight a little bit about the process, about the tool itself, and about the training that will go into this new model. Some challenges that we have with our current tool is that it is very time-consuming to complete the overall evaluation. In fact, when you print out the actual Danielson model that we're currently using, if you printed it out, it would be 35 or more pages in length, which is quite extensive. Also, some of the skills within the rubric were redundant. There were multiple places where you could capture the same skill for a teacher, and so that is a little bit difficult and sometimes can be a little detrimental to the teacher because you're asking them to, in multiple domains and multiple components, to be evaluated on that skill. Also, many skills were under the same indicator and more about the tool on instruction or coaching. What we want to do is have our building leadership be instructional coaches and be the instructional leader on their campus. And with an evaluation tool that we currently have, I'm not saying that that doesn't already happen, but it hasn't happened as well because it's more about filling the tool out and working on that. And it's labor intensive to actually even go through the process of speaking to it with the employee. What we are trying to get to is more of a collaborative effort and to really be looking at having our building leadership be having those instructional conversations to try to coach our teachers in areas that they need to refine and certainly celebrate the areas that they are doing exceptionally well in. When I started to speak about the redundancy, I gave you an example here on this slide. Our current rubric has different skills that are under the same indicator. For example, engaging students, in our current evaluation tool, it would be found in the level of engagement would be in level of difficulty, logical sequence, guided practice, and as well as in aligned activities. The process that we went through to develop our new observation tool, we had a committee that assembled, and you can see that there were 5 teachers, 3 principals, 2 assistant principals, 1 instructional coach, a content coach, 4 district office administrators, as well as a facilitator. We included, within those teachers, we had both high school and elementary, and as well as special education educators. So the goal of the committee was to look at this new evaluation tool and to try to better articulate instructional skills that are needed within high-quality instruction. We wanted to eliminate the redundancies and also minimize the paperwork process between the teachers and administrators to really focus on the instructional components and have the dialogue and have it be a coaching conversation between the teacher and the administrator. Ultimately, we are wanting to improve instruction because we want to improve student achievement. So the process that we went through is once we had a tool drafted, we elicited the feedback from assistant principals as well as principals. We then had the principals weigh in with that feedback and then take the tool out to their teachers, elicit feedback from them, and then we compiled all that feedback, met again to make the necessary changes, and the new classroom teacher tool is now being presented to you. So what you have that was uploaded to the actual tool is what we have already gone through the vetting process and received the feedback from teachers as well as administrators. There are some rubric similarities between our current Danielson model as well as our new tool. The domains are the same. They're planning, environment, instruction, and professional responsibilities. Additionally, the rubric similarities for proficiency levels are the same. They are excelling, proficient, developing, and unsatisfactory. So when we look at the number of indicators that we have in our current Danielson tool as well as the new tool, in the area of planning, our current Danielson model had 6 areas. Our new one has 4. In the Danielson model, classroom environment had 5, and in our new tool, it has 3. But in the area of instruction, our Danielson model had 5 components in it, and now with an emphasis on instruction, our new tool has 9. So in the area of professionalism, our current tool had 6, and our new tool has 1, but also has a different amount of indicators at the end that are minimum expectations as well.
So Ms. Hobbs,
Yes.
going back to that slide.
Sure.
I didn't have the opportunity to compare the old and the new. So when you take a look at the instruction increase in indicators, can you give a couple examples of what the new indicators are?
We focused and we broke those down. So in the area of instruction, we talked more about the modeling of expected student tasks. What we're really asking for our teachers is to take the overarching objective of the lesson and break that down and task analyze that. So therefore, they're breaking it down so that kids are doing the more simplistic tasks and then culminating with the actual learning target at the end. Another piece is we're providing meaning and understanding for kids. Kids always are first to ask, when will I need to know this and why is it important and will I ever need to use this again? So we're asking our teachers to really make those connections for our students so that they understand why they're learning it and how they're going to be able to use that in the future. That builds meaning and it also solidifies their understanding of how they're going to use that in the future.
Agreed. Thank you.
And I had one question.
Ms. Pingarelli?
Yeah, and on that one also, we went from professionalism, 6 indicators to 1. Can you
Yes, and
explain?
Thank you, Mrs. Pingarelli. We also have at the end of this tool, we have professional expectations. So there are 13 of those. So they are the minimum expectations that we would expect of a teacher in the classroom. So while it looks like it's a lot less, the expectations and what we expect from them as professionals, as our teachers and all staff, those are still in there. It's just there's only one big component in the area of professionalism.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Ms. Underhill?
Yeah, so I was just looking at, and I'm sorry, because I haven't been along for the ride, but in looking at the actual tool that you've developed, can you explain to me the difference between the skills that are listed on the rubric and the indicators?
The skills that are listed on the rubric, the one with the definition and critical attributes, that is used as a tool to remind people of what is expected. It's not actually part of the actual observation tool.
Okay.
The actual proficiency levels, what you see under there, that is what they are evaluated on.
Okay.
But we thought it would be important for our teachers and for our administrators to have some critical attributes of what that might look like in a classroom.
Right, no, that makes sense. I just wasn't clear on, I'm missing where the indicators are outlined.
The indicators are underneath each of the proficiency levels. For example, if you were looking at planning and preparation, under the area of excelling, it was talking about explicit and measurable lesson objectives. The lesson objectives are rigorous, and you use a variety of data. So those are the indicators on the actual tool.
Okay.
And the one, when you're talking about the skills and the critical attributes definition list, that's not actually part of our tool. That is something that we did as kind of a cheat sheet, so to speak, so that people really understood what that looked like.
Okay, got it. I just was counting more than 9, so I must just be not following it, but that makes sense.
Well, in between each blue line are the number of indicators. So there's a blue line, for example, of classroom environment, and then all of those underneath are the components that go under that. So determining evaluation ratings, skills, descriptors within the rubric, the appropriate use of the skills, and whether they're present or absent. And if a teacher did a lesson, for example, and they did not do a certain component, but it wasn't necessary and it didn't infringe on the learning, the teacher would not be marked down for that. Also, excelling and proficient ratings are used when the teacher effectively and consistently demonstrate rubric descriptors, and developing an unsatisfactory ratings are used when the skill was clearly needed or was ineffectively used or needed to use to enhance student learning. So next year, we're hoping to use the new classroom tool for our teachers. The evidence that teachers would need to supply as part of the evaluation process would certainly be lesson plans, which they are now. We expect our teachers to be well-planned and to be prepared each and every day. Also, student achievement data. If they have recently given an iReady diagnostic, to have that data with them to be able to talk about what they're doing in relationship to intervening for kids that may need extra help, what we're doing for our kids that are at the high achievement levels to continue to enrich and move them forward. So that would be a conversation that would happen between a teacher and an administrator. Also, the formula for calculating the points, we are going to keep that the same. Our thought process with that is that if we are using this new tool, we want to make sure that we gain some level of comfortability and our teachers feel confident and comfortable with that before we change the scoring process on them as well. Also, the required observation, number of minutes and the number of times an instructional leader needs to be in their class to do an observation, that also stays the same. The big difference is the emphasis is going to shift to instructional coaching. And so we want our principals to really be having those deep conversations to help our teachers continue to grow and get better.
You have a question? No. Okay. Ms. Underhill?
Just so on that aspect, and I'm really excited about the whole coaching and all the training that you've done on that. I think that's really fabulous. How will you build in time for those conversations to happen?
Well, typically, as they are now, many of them happen on a teacher's prep time, or a lot of times they'll come in early before or after school. That's typically when that happens. Certainly on a professional collaboration, modified Monday, that could probably happen as well. So our teachers and our principals have that time to have that conversation and continue to grow and get better.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that because in the past, we always had that conversation after our observation, but my question is like ongoing. If it's coaching to me, that is like ongoing, not just one time after your observation.
Absolutely.
So I guess I'm just wondering, like, how can we build that time in so that there is that piece?
Well, one of the things that I'm fresh out of the principalship, so one of the things that I always did was continue to walk in and talk to the teacher and continue to walk through the classroom on a regular basis, compliment them on the things that they're doing really well, and maybe have a conversation just right then and there. Kids are leaving the classroom maybe to go to PE, and you have that few minutes to just have that dialogue and say, hey, here's some things that I noticed that you're doing really well. Here are some things that I think if we make just a few tweaks to it, we really could take you forward, and here's some things that I would like to do to help support that, whether it be sending in an instructional coach, have them go to another campus where maybe somebody that's a veteran teacher could help support them, and they watch the lesson and then have that conversation. So we have a lot of ways of making sure that that happens, but certainly if we had a struggling teacher in the classroom, we'd be spending a lot of time having that dialogue because we want to support them and help them get better.
Sorry.
Let me just add, just to clarify to her question, what is the mandate for the administration to spend in time frame, in amount of time, like quantitative time in a classroom for observation?
And Dr. Davidson, I'm going to refer to you. I believe it is 60 minutes in totality, but there's is 70 minutes? Okay, 70 minutes in totality. But for example, there's supposed to be a formal observation where the teacher knows you're coming in and you watch a lesson from start to finish, and then also 2 drop-ins. Our probationary teachers, which are teachers within their first 3 years with us, they have the same process during first semester and second semester. So it's multiple times for our newer educators or those teachers that are probationary to us. Did I answer your question, Mrs. Underhill?
Oh, yeah, you're
Okay.
answering my question. I just
Okay.
keep thinking of additional ones.
No, I got this all spread out here.
Can I just add, Marla,
Absolutely.
to what you were saying? This is for evaluation, but it's also for observation, okay? So we're using them together so that's, makes it pretty clear. But as far as the expectation from superintendent, from here, is that it is ongoing. And it's not oh my gosh, we didn't get your evaluation done, it's April, and now we've got a time frame and you've got 60 minutes. This needs to be an ongoing piece that does the concept that we're looking at, which has to do with this thing called instruction. And when we brought in a consultant, a coach that had been here, this Larry Dagnan, who has been working with our teams, and we have trained our people, about 2/3 of them, I believe, 2/3 of our principals, not our instructional coaches, our principals, to become better instructional leaders, so that they understand that when you're looking at a lesson, you're not just saying, that was great, you're scripting it out, you are assessing it, there's a lot of work that goes into that process, and then you're bringing in what worked, but more importantly, talk to me about why you made this decision for this objective. Talk to me about how did you make sure that the kids were engaged? The teachers who have had the opportunity, and this has been for our principals to learn, but our teachers have really had, I think, a very positive experience saying, that was the best feedback that I have received, and now I do it. The next thing is not to just necessarily discuss it and see you in a couple months. We're going to see you tomorrow. When you bring the lesson in again, let's try it again. So that you're doing it not only with our teachers who are struggling or our teachers who are new. These are our best teachers who want to get even better and make that movement. Curriculum, instruction, assessment, and resources. Those are the 4 things that have to do with bringing up our scores. This is key, and when we're looking at it as something that you'll approve as a tool, we're going to use it regardless for observation. And we'll be using it all the time, but it's not our coaches, again, it's our principals and our assistants who are going to be expected and really want to be trained on this. We are including, and let me just add, we're including the PLC is inside of that tool. So when you're seeing the planning, you'll be hearing things that they have been working on all year, that Dr. Bell and her team has worked on, the PLCs. What are your lessons? How do you know the kids? What are the objectives? What are you going to do with a child that doesn't do it? That's built in to the first part of planning. But the thing that has to be observed is how they're teaching the lesson, how our teachers, and our principals are crying out for it, and our teachers the feedback we're getting, yeah, you're not just dismissing me or saying I'm great. I don't want to hear I'm great. Tell me how I can get better. And that's really what this is about.
I believe, and at this point, I'll chime in if you're the governing board, you've asked a lot of questions, and at this point, I believe we're headed in the right direction, but we're just not quite there yet. And when I take a look at setting not only our administrators for success and our teachers for success, we're here for our kids. So I think of three things. One, setting very clear expectations. One, to improve student success, and as you've all identified, use this as a coaching tool. I believe that looking at some of the definitions, when we cultivate differences, I looked at some of the answers as how did we create the committee? Where did you get the information? I didn't hear anything if we looked at other peer districts. How are they doing things better to defining some of these asks or these skills that we're looking for? Because and I sent an example of what engagement was, and when I look at our engagement, it is not inclusive. Specifically, when I see engaging all students throughout a lesson, it says hold students accountable, calls on non-volunteers. That's not an inclusive environment. That is a forced accountability on a student if you're calling on a student that is not prepared. There are some coaching tools for special ed. You do a prep, there are other tools to get them involved, but calling on non-volunteers is not inclusive. So I would question our inclusive efforts when we're talking about safety and well-being and encouraging our students. I would like the committee to go back. Now, with that in mind, setting clear expectations, we start school the first week of August. I would like the committee to come back in July and bring it forward if the governing board agrees to that. The other thing is, Ms. Marla Hobbs, you mentioned, administrators would find teachers that are struggling. According to the data and that Dr. Davidson presented, 99% of our teachers are effective. I would question if our administrators know what struggling means. And I believe in a previous presentation by Mr. Moss, identifying if Dr. Bell, I don't know if our administrators know what the standards are. So if you look at one of the skill sets, it asks them to articulate if the student can meet the objective of that particular, let me see, I wrote it down, I have my notes here. But with that statement, if they're looking for focus on student learning and being able to articulate the objective, the administrators should understand what the standards, what the outcome should be as it aligns to state standards. I have concerns with the labeling of excelling, proficient, developing, and unsatisfactory. I've done some research in general and private practice. When we look at what's considered excelling and what I've deemed in other school districts, other private sectors, it can be called excelling, highly qualified, distinguished, and some word choice that they used is very few others in your role produce the results that you have accomplished. You have achieved outstanding outcomes both in producing uncommonly high quality results and developing successful working relationships. You are setting the standard for excellence in your role. I found this one particularly interesting because we do have in our mission statement excellence. So when I look at what we describe as excelling, to me, that is perceived, that should be expected behavior. So redefining what excelling looks like should not be 99% of our staff. If our state standards are not being addressed, if we don't have successful special ed students passing regular curriculum, I'm just concerned with some of these definitions of what excelling is and what is job one expectation. And with our administrators, I know they're working towards assessing what is struggling, developing, and effective. I know we're in the process of identifying that, but really honing down what is the difference between highly effective versus struggling. The other piece is, where's the student in the tool piece? I didn't see any comments for student feedback. I know in college courses and on some of my classes I've taken, there's always maybe a mid-year survey, a tool, a touch point that the principals or the administrators get feedback from the students. And let's see, I believe that's the main thing, is we're headed in the right direction. I would like, based on some of the questions that were already in the emails, some of the feedback or comments that I'm hearing from the board, that the team go back, make some amendments so that everybody's set up for success, we drive student outcomes, and our administrators have a clear direction of what this coaching tool should do, is drive this instruction. And that's pretty much it for me.
Mrs. Seja-Martinez, members of the board, Superintendent Powles Thompson, would you mind, President Seja-Martinez, if Ms. Hobbs has one more slide? I had one more slide as well to share with you, and I'd like to just address some of the comments I've just taken some notes on. And then certainly at the end, we'll stand here for additional questions. And I do know that per the motion, there is a recommendation, and I'll certainly allow, obviously, you guys to work through that. But I do want to address some things. If you could give us a couple more minutes. All right. Sure. Thank you.
All right, when talking about instructional coaching, we, like Mrs. Powles Thompson mentioned, we did do a 2-day training for, we've gotten through 2/3 of our administrators so far, where we had, Mr. Dignan took us through looking at a lesson, watching a video lesson, getting back to scripting, then going back and analyzing that lesson, coming up with your reinforcement, and then also not only just asking the teacher or telling the teacher what some of the things that you observe, but why they're important. I think we sometimes leave that part out. So, and then after the 2-day workshop, then Mr. Dignan, and as well as many of the executive directors who oversee schools, went out and watched and observed a lesson with the principal and the assistant principal. We went through the same process of doing the scripting of the lesson, analysis of the lesson, planning a coaching conference, and then we would observe the actual coaching conference between the administrator and the teacher. And then after the teacher left, which it was always a very, very positive experience, the teachers really appreciated the additional feedback, the time that the administrator took to actually go through a coaching conference with them, talking about why certain skills are so critical to student learning. But then after the teacher had left, then Mr. Dignan provided the administrator with some feedback on ways that they can continue to get better and some things to think about as they go in classrooms in the future. So we did that training for all of our administrators, and so then we are also planning on having our teachers get trained, because we want them to know what the expectations are, what the differences are, and making sure that they understand what each of those components mean as well. So I'll turn this back over now to Dr. Davidson so that we can finish up this.
All right, again, good evening. As we enter this, one of our last few slides, and just about possible future changes, where do we go with observation tools and the evaluation itself? I wanted to share with you, and Ms. Ayo Martinez, you mentioned working alongside other districts. I do serve as part of our Association for School Personnel here in our state, and we do have conversations about evaluation. I believe you will soon be seeing, and I have it up there as a bullet, some governing board policy changes and regulation updates, because Senate Bill 1071 did pass. That does, you remember I started the presentation with the State Board of Education model framework for evaluation. That has been removed from the law. So we now, you all, we have local control of how we choose to do our evaluation process and what tools we use. So certainly knowing that was coming, and we believe that was going to play out positively, that was kind of the reason why we went through this committee process to say, and really work with our staff that was a part of that committee, as what are the components of quality instruction, and how can we then focus our efforts on that. I'll share with you that, and Ms. Hobbs spoke a little bit to the evaluation process where the student achievement data comes into play. That right now is measured in our student learning objective, as well as our actual achievement data sets that our teachers can choose from. Right now that's at 35%. The new law says we can go as low as 20 and as high as 33. So from an evaluation perspective, that final rating, performance evaluation label that comes, I'm going to have to modify that slightly. The reason why I have it there as a bullet point where we say consider revision to other tools and models is that, as I also shared earlier, a lot of our tools, models look very similar, but the tools also look similar. And so what we would like to do as we move forward through the year is to work with our teams across all of the different subgroups of employees to revisit the tool and then take a look at the ultimate process. How do we get to those performance classification labels? I think, Ms. Ayo Martinez, you spoke to the category names. Certainly, we can work through that. I have no problem doing that if that is the request of the board. I'll share with you, we left them for tonight's purpose and the tool purpose, we left them the same because those are the names of the categories across all of our tools currently. And we weren't looking to change all of the tools right now. And remember, we are still, as part of SB 1071, we still have to have the four classification labels that we've talked about tonight, from highly effective all the way down to ineffective. So those still remain intact. I'd like to, if you wouldn't mind, Ms. Pingarelli, speak to the professional expectations piece, because I'll tell you, by no means is HR looking to drum up more business on behalf of professional expectations and behavior of our staff. But we felt as a committee that instead of having to address from an evaluation or observation perspective every little finite skill, we took all of that and said, okay, out of all those 6, 7 categories, what are the minimum expectations? No matter what teaching job you have, these are the minimum expectations. And if you can't do this at a minimal proficiency level, then it is somewhat more of a discipline scenario, more so than it is an observation perspective, because those are requirements that we have of our teachers. So that's how that conversation played out there. Ms. Underhill, you spoke to coaching, and the hope and the desire would be that if we have a tool that's a little bit more streamlined, focused in on instruction, and not one where, at least in Carter's opinion, I've seen it as a hoop jump scenario, we might be able to really get to those nitty-gritty conversations and find the time between certified staff and administrator to change the outcomes that we want to get to. So that's the desire of our presentation and the work that we've done this year. I think I've probably shared a lot, but certainly just wanted to respond and want you to know where we are and where we hope to go based on tonight's presentation.
Mr. Sandoval?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that. So, Ms. Hobb, Dr. D, Davidson, sorry. One thing that we haven't really talked about in depth this evening, which I am going to, that I'm confident is one of the impacts of this evaluation observation tool is, we're social animals, and we talk about our environments, we adapt to those environments, right? And I've always talked about the emotional currency, of our teachers in this case, and which impact, our students' learning environment, right? So we talk about student success. So when we take a look at these evaluations, can you talk a little bit about just how it's going to impact the creating a culture of support, for our teachers, ensuring that they understand that these tools are used for their growth and their development and their success in our district, not as a tool from a punitive regard, right?
Certainly.
So
Yeah.
can you
Ms.
speak to
Hobbs,
kind of
will
the
you-
human element, I guess?
No, that's good, and I would invite Ms. Hobbs up, just because I know that she's already been working through that process, and from already a principal training mechanism, bringing teachers to that table to talk about the new tool. I'll share with you, Mr. Sandoval, just from my perspective, I haven't had the opportunity to actually serve as an evaluator using our current teacher tool, right, principal to certified staff. But it seems the conversations that I often get involved in are not necessarily around, is my observation time leading to a change in my professional behavior? Is the conversation getting me to become a better educator? Usually what I see is our staff seems to be, they're concerned about the ultimate effectiveness label, because that relates to performance pay. So obviously we know, and we've seen the study, it's important that our staff receive the greatest amount of resources they can for the job they do. They work very hard. And so I think that, as I've shared before, I think that performance pay system has been built very friendly for our staff, which in turn I think feeds the fact that we're gonna jump through these hoops. We're gonna do what we need to do to get ultimately to that effectiveness label that's positive. I don't know, at least from the world that I've lived in over here in human resource, I haven't had a lot of direct conversation about, wow, this tool is making me a better teacher in this area. Ms. Hobbs could probably speak to that a little bit more from that relational perspective.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And I don't disagree. I mean, I think, compensation from a monetary regard is part of it, right? And, when we take a look at attrition and really retention more than anything else, I think as an individual considers whether or not to stay in a certain position, compensation is part of it, but the other side of it is, feeling valued and respected and supported as an individual, which I think is even more important than the salary side.
Can you speak to that a little bit?
Mr. Sandoval, I couldn't agree more. I believe that the collaborative conversations that happen between our instructional leaders at the sites and the teachers are critical. And you would never tell somebody that they weren't doing a good job without providing some support to them and ensuring that they get the help that they need to become better. And we wouldn't just say that there's an area of deficiency and then walk away and hope that they can improve that. It's a collaborative effort. We're here to help each other grow. We do that every day, and we wanted to build that also in for our building administrators and help them learn and grow in their understanding about instruction, how to have those conversations with staff, and also understanding of the instructional skills, like I said. So it is a collaborative effort. Part of the reason we decided not to make a change in the scoring process is because we didn't want the tool to jeopardize somebody while we're all learning in this process. That's why we kept everything fairly the same amount of domains, the same proficiency levels, and also the scoring, because we want everybody to have the opportunity to familiarize themselves with this. And our building leaders are also learning, because they're going back to what we used to do a lot of years ago, which is the scripting and the analysis of the lesson, and then working on their coaching skills. So those are some of my thoughts about that, so.
Thank you for that. But a quick question, in and around, I mean, when we take a look at our exit interviews, with some teachers who have left the district, I mean, were there any findings in those that may have influenced, how we move forward from an evaluation and observation perspective?
Currently, Mr. Sandoval, I think I shared a few meetings ago, we have revised our exit interview process, so we're capturing, I believe, much more quality data in the qualitative portion, right, where if anybody gives any feedback or if we're having direct conversations. I have not heard anything at this point in time that related directly to the evaluation process. Any feedback that I've received, as you know, and we've shared before, is typically for moving to areas of advancement or additional salary is usually the cause for people to go. There are some comments out there about, I would call them working conditions, that relationship, right?
Right.
Between staff member and school leader or department leader, whatever that may be. I don't typically see information coming back regarding the observation tool or the process.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Can I also, I'm passionate about what we're doing with the instruction, and it's part of what, we're doing with our strategic plan. We had a wonderful meeting Tuesday, all day long, on strategic plan. So when we're looking at, again, with what you're saying, Mr. Sandoval, with the instrument, and we don't want to hurt our people. We never want to do that. What we want to be able to do, though, is not make something called proficient a bad word, or developing a bad word. What you want to be able to do is be able to move people. If you can be developing a year on a different instrument, on a different group of students, on a different subject area, and if you have moved even throughout the year from developing to proficient on a particular area, that's massive growth, and that makes me feel better than when I'm saying, I'm dancing my heart out here. Why are our children not achieving? There's not one teacher in our district that is not proficient or highly proficient in caring about wanting our children to be effective. That we know. But if we're helping them and helping ourselves be able to say, do I, as a superintendent, do my K-12 administrators and do my principals know quality instruction and be able to say, I can turn this thing up and you'll be more proficient than you were, and that might help our children. Everybody wants that, and it feels good when you've achieved it. If you're excelling, that means nothing if you can't tell me why. So that, I think it will bring up our self-esteem more, and we're not going to cost people money. That's not the intent. This is, that it's used in a double-edged way of doing it. This is instruction, and it really means that the administrators, it is really a thing for my principals and the assistant principals. You need to know what a Rembrandt is compared to a Charlie Schultz cartoon. You have to know the difference between excellence, so that you yourself can talk and say, well, how do I move my people? And it doesn't matter what subject. It's not like, okay, PE is different. Good instruction is good instruction, and excellent is excellent.
Yeah.
And
No, I
Yeah.
agree very quickly. What I like about the collaborative approach, it also allows leadership to take a look in the mirror, right? And to understand, where they may have opportunities from a leadership regard.
Ms. Stone?
I will say, I very much appreciate the scale down, if you will, and really engaging the way you have been, the leadership at the schools, the administration and things. That's, to me, our teachers need so much the support of their administrators, the guidance, and our administrators need to be able to provide it. I think sometimes we may get administrators in there who are not quite ready, and they need that little extra bit of training, which that's, what we're here for. We're here to help them become excellent in what they're doing as well, because, everything affects everything else. How often, just straight up, who gets performance pay? What rating do you have to have?
Currently, Ms. Doan, I would say the majority of our certified staff is eligible for performance pay. There's a few people that you would say certified versus licensed, like a speech and language pathologist. They are not currently in the performance pay plan. So the majority of our certified team, as well as our current administrative team.
I'm talking about what rating do you have to get with do you rate them with the tool? Do they qualify by rating with the tool?
Yes, ma'am. Currently, our performance pay plan, Ms. Doan, has a certain percentage. I believe it's 50% of our plan is dedicated to the performance classification label of the employee.
Right.
So that's 50%. The performance pay then also takes into account, and I had it backwards, 50% is to the district's graduation rate. I think it's 33% that's tied to our evaluation process, and 17% is tied to the student learning outcome, that goal that's established on behalf of student achievement.
Now, do teachers get paid a different amount of performance pay according to their excellence level?
Yes, ma'am. Across those three areas that I referenced,
Right.
If you are effective or highly effective, you have access to the full amounts for those categories. If you're developing, that does vary, yes, ma'am. And if you're ineffective, that varies as well.
Well, that's good because we want to make sure that people that are working themselves to pieces to be excellent and most excellent are rewarded for that. I like. I think this is a good innovation, or however you want to word that. It's a step, right, Monica? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good step too, and I'm excited about it because I know that this is a thing that teachers love and fear, mm-hmm. and it needs to work for them, and also not to take as much time the way you've fixed it. I'm pretty happy with it as a good step myself. So. To a bunch of Monica's points, however, I agree. I agree with some of the renaming, perhaps.
Ms. Underhill?
Yeah, so I just wanted to say, like, I also appreciate the streamlinedness, even just the way that it looks, because there was so much in each of those boxes before. And now that I understand how it's outlined, it doesn't seem quite as overwhelming. In fact, the instructional piece kind of looks like the outline of a lesson plan in a lot of ways. So I guess I would say I'm less hung up on the tool than I am on just making sure that the process that goes with it allows for us to really implement this coaching model more significantly, and and that we have the time and the planning. I think, and I had mentioned this, like, are there going to be any sort of peer involvement? And I'm not saying we need to have our peers, necessarily evaluating us, but on the other side, if we're trying to develop an atmosphere of coaching and the PLC, et cetera, it seems to me to have a peer, like if I had my colleague involved in my observation and involved in my planning of my lesson, and then I got to go see her do the same thing, to me, you're building a whole league of coaches. So to me, that's something I would really consider, because for me, I know that when I was observed, it's a very isolating, like, scary thing. But if you have a team that's working on it and you're all working to improve, I think it would be more effective. And then just the last thing, and I know I brought this up before, but if we're going to continue to evaluate, planning and evidence, I feel like as a district, if we're trying to move to a more consistent kind of educational framework across our schools, I feel like we need to really support our teachers in ensuring that we have example lesson plans for, like, the whole week and the whole lined up, so that teachers can spend more time on the actual instruction and less time on trying to figure out what they're going to do, especially at the elementary. I can't speak to middle or high school. So to me, we got to make sure that we're somehow getting that developed. And you had said that we haven't figured out a place to kind of host that or whatever, but I hope we're doing that. And then the data piece. So I know right now that teachers are allowed to be, kind of push forth whatever evidence that they choose to use, and there's lots of examples. But I think again, on a consistency piece as a district, we need to start figuring out, okay, what are the data points that are absolutely kind of critical for this grade level or whatever it might be. And if it's iReady, that's fantastic. But in order to kind of push this out as a consistent district, I think we need to be thinking about some of those things. So.
President Sam Martinez, members of the board, Ms. Underhill, real quick on regards to the data sets. Your comments, I fully agree with 100%, and I'll share with you as we move at some point to begin really evaluating the evaluation process as a whole, where the data sets come into play. It will be in a very important conversation between human resources, our staff, and academic services to ensure that those points that are selected are very applicable to the teacher, but also ones that we value to move student achievement across, right? And right now, there's a high level of flexibility in some cases, and so I just wanted to highlight that point. You're right on.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Pingarelli?
Well, thank you very much. I am glad to hear that the paperwork is less on this current evaluation versus the past. And I just wanted to break down again the performance pay 50% was based on, I know we had conversations before on graduation rate, and I think it had to be over like 88%, something that our district has never fallen below. So 50% is a given. And then how much is based on this evaluation?
Mrs. Pingarelli, 33%, I believe.
So 33% in the 4 categories of highly effective, effective, developing, and ineffective. Highly effective and effective get full compensation,
Yes, ma'am, that is
which
correct.
would be 99.6%.
In its current
Receive that.
format, yes, ma'am, that is true.
That's correct. So it's pretty much a given no matter what. For administrators, I'm trying to correlate the AZ Merit and the Ames science scores that are so bad to a 99.6% of our teachers that are highly effective or effective. I'm really having a hard time wrapping my head around that. And I don't blame the teachers. I blame the administrators. I blame the governing board. I know Mrs. Bellis-Thompson had said that we're concerned about self-esteem. I'm not concerned about self-esteem for admin. If they cannot bring the scores up and they cannot be able to work with the teachers to help them do what they need to do, just my suggestion as one board member to you is that I would not shuffle the deck, but I would let admin go. If they are not up to the task, there are a lot of teachers and a lot of qualified teachers that would love to move up the ranks. I think that's all I have to say right now.
We've heard a lot of you've heard a lot of comments from the governing board. I would agree, Mr. Sandoval, with you, the humanistic part, but that's part of leadership, people leadership, and in this industry, we lead people, whether they're 5, 3, or mature and wise. And it's the delivery of that message with respect and empathy. And that's not part holistically of this tool. It is to drive instruction so that our students are ultimate successful. Some of the student feedback we've heard is that our teachers are lacking in this area. And so this tool is headed in the right direction, but setting very clear definitions and expectations is where we're going to get those outcomes. And for me, we're just not there. So tonight, it is an actionable item. I'll go ahead and start, and I would like to table this. So I move to table this based on the feedback that the governing board has given, and it come back in July so that it's in time to start the new school year. So I move to table it to next month.
I will second that.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second to table it based on the feedback.
Can we ask a question?
And any additional comments, questions, Ms. Underhill?
I guess before that, what I want to understand is what are we wanting the group to go back and clarify? So the tool is the tool, right? The tool is a tool. The tool is not the process, is what I feel like we're hearing. So I guess I just want to be very clear. If we're asking the group, which has done a lot of work, to go back and clarify, what is that? What is it that we're wanting to be clarified?
For me, it was the definitions specifically, and I gave an example in the email of what engagement looks like. That's the specific example I'm referring to. I'm not stuck on the titles of highly qualified. What I am focused on is the definition of what highly proficient is. And highly proficient is you are the role model, you are driving instruction. You are, to your point, feedback that is expected is accepted. Those teachers that go to the role model, you know that's a top-notch teacher because they're driving their campus culture. So really redefining what we want on our campus and thinking about who's your go-to person, that's the highly proficient. Those are the teachers we want more of. And define the definition so that our administrators know clearly what is expected on both ends. Mr. Sandoval?
Is there a confusion on the delineation between the definitions of effective, highly effective? Categories, I think there's four, right? The four different measures.
Yes, sir. President Sandoval Martinez, members of the board, Mr. Sandoval, Ms. Pals Thompson. Right now, Mr. Sandoval, when the data from the observation is collected, what happens is, based upon the number of points given per category, for example, highly proficient would be seen as a 4, proficient seen as a 3, developing 2, right? We take those scores, and then there are cut scores depending upon as part of the evaluation that leads to that effectiveness label. So obviously, the higher your points, the greater opportunity you have to get seen as a highly effective educator versus effective. So it's just a cut score. It's a formula that exists based upon the observation data that's collected.
And I guess more specifically, as you're going through the training process, this is being, communicated, obviously, during the training to all staff.
Yes, sir. From the observation tool perspective, yes, sir. And what I would share, just to go back to Ms. Ceja Martinez's point, as when we were in the committee talking about quality instruction and what is the best of the best, at least I know I did. I certainly, from experience, thought of certain educators who are the best. If we were to walk into a classroom and say, wow, look at this way in which this employee, this teacher put together a lesson plan, what would that look like? And here's the quality components. And then, you had to scale that back to say, gosh, what would an ineffective one be versus developing or proficient? So we did have that conversation. Doesn't mean we couldn't improve it, but we certainly had that thought in mind. But yes, as part of the training, you would certainly need to dig into those quadrants of sorts.
Gotcha. And then looking at some of the slides, obviously, as we move forward, this is a tool or a process, like anything else throughout the district, that we will have oversight to ensure continuous improvement, right? Oversight and, inclusivity from, many channels, many lenses, to ensure that we're taking a holistic approach to just defining a solution that, makes a global impact, on the district.
This is certainly a living document tool. And on the slide, you shared that, our hope would be that if you gave us the approval to move it forward, that as we moved across this school year, we'd be gathering that feedback, not just from our leaders, but from those that are being evaluated. What does that conversation look like? Is it moving us? Because if it was positive, we would continue to refine it and push that process then through the other evaluation tools that exist, those other tools that are out there.
Thank you. And I guess lastly, I just want to reiterate, my comment around the collaborative approach and really the human element that is tied to this tool. Again, for me, it is very important, that our teachers, come to work inspired and feel that they're supported. No different, so a positive mindset, right? No different than our students, ability to learn. If they don't come in the right mindset, that impedes on their success. So that said, with the assurance that this tool will, continue to evolve and adapt to the shifting needs of our district and really our teachers to ensure positive outcomes, student achievement and success. It is absolutely in a format at this point, what I see at this point, one that, I fully support. So thank you.
I just want to add, Governing Board, Dr. Davidson did highlight that the state made a change for local control, and in the committee, the only voice that's missing is our voice, and we should be held accountable as well to drive the tools, the processes, the engagement, and the retention. So looking at this piece, our voice is the only one missing.
Just to be clear, Monica, what exactly do you want to change in this?
I want the definitions to be very clear on what is expected. And if you're looking for more examples, I can email them to you. I know I emailed again, and I'll say it again. You've done a phenomenal job. I know I lived this document from 2006 to 2013, and it's very long, so the fact that it is short, I am full support. We all need to know where we're headed and what is clearly expected. And to me, when I look at what's excelling and what's proficient, it's gray. It's not saying this to what Dr. Davidson described is excelling. And I would like some tweaking to go back to the board, look at some best practices, cross industries, cross education, even other states that do it well, and bring it back. And I can give you, again, some of the examples that I've seen.
I have another question.
Ms. Underhill.
So, I'm sorry, this question is in regard to 1071. So, the state is no longer mandating, like, the type of evaluation or what the evaluation includes, but are they going to continue to keep those other indicators for performance pay? The grad rate, Arizona Merit, and the other?
Good question, Ms. Underhill. The 1071 there really spoke to the evaluation framework, so meaning we still have to have those 4 categories. It did lessen the amount of percentage of data that needed to be used to get to those teachers' categories, the effectiveness labels. It also removed the requirements for certain research-based tools. It gave, again, local control back to our governing boards and our staff to really define what tool it is we want to use.
Right.
From a performance pay perspective, you recall, I will bring that to you again early in the year. I am required to survey our staff about their thoughts on our performance pay plan. How did they feel? Any changes they want, and I'll bring you that information. From a performance pay perspective, we certainly have the ability to define what we believe is important and how we want to see that played out. And I said earlier, but I'll say it again, I believe that plan was developed to provide as much compensation to our staff as possible.
Right.
We certainly, you as a board, other team members can weigh in on that. I can share with you that we have administrators on our team who are looking at our data, and I believe if your charge to me is find a way to continue to, one, increase student achievement, but also to really compensate educators that are moving kids, we have ways to do that.
Yeah.
We all have to be on the same page and agree that that is how we define success as an educator in our district.
I mean, that speaks to why the tool needs to be pretty crystal clear in regard to assigning those levels as well. Which, I mean, I don't know how to make it crystal clear, but I'm just saying it does play a piece in that. But yeah, absolutely. I think, the performance pay is a huge piece. Now, that said, I know.
Excuse me, I apologize for interrupting, but we need to take a break.
Okay. Okay.
Can I get everyone just to come out to the lobby for a few minutes? Take a brief recess, that's all. We can meet here in just a few minutes.
We're going to table it.
So we're gonna table.
And
Do a vote to table.
in fact, let's do that. Yes, let's do a vote to table it. Monica, I'm sorry. Let's do a vote to table it. Yep. And you'll get a vote to table it because it's a table vote.
Are we good?
Right?
Are we on? Okay. Good evening. Thank you very much. I do apologize. We did have an emergency, so what we're going to do for the rest of this evening, we have a motion on the table. We do need to finish this vote. It is mentioned to table it, and then we have to do a mandatory address the budget as a result of state statute and timeframes. We do apologize for the inconvenience for everybody else joining us. We will have to bring back the rest of the items. So if you would like to go ahead and adjourn for the rest of the evening, please do so, and then the board will go ahead and wrap these last two items up. Okay. All right, so governing board, we do have a motion on the table to table the evaluation, and then the goal is to bring it back. Please vote. Yes. Yes.
Yep.
Thank you very much. It has been tabled. And we're going to address the budget, discussion and consideration of the publication of the proposed fiscal year 2019-2020 maintenance and operations and district additional assistant budgets, and authorized to hold a public hearing no later than July 15th, 2019. Ms. Myers?
We're not.
PowerPoint,
not-
please. Thank you. Well, good evening, President Seja Martinez, members of the Governing Board, Mrs. Palace Thompson, and community. Thank you for the opportunity to present the district's proposed fiscal year 2020 budget. Tonight, I will share general budget background and requirement information and a summary of the fiscal year 2020 budget process, the fiscal year 2020 budget changes, the estimated tax rate for next year, as well as highlight cash-controlled and grant budgets. I would also like to acknowledge the work of our budget analysts, Veronica Fabella and Stephanie Checky, who were both instrumental in the development process, and we thank them for their assistance. The fiscal year 2020 budget and employee compensation is part of all four perspectives of the district's strategic plan, but it is also primarily a part of stewardship of community resources. And this perspective, which is defined as solidifying and adhering to effective policies, practices, and accountability for district resources. Each year, a variety of internal and external factors are considered during the budget process.
Ms. Myers?
Yes, ma'am.
Just a brief moment. I am going to step away to go to take care of the emergency, and then Ms. Stone, as a veteran governing board, do you mind being pro temp and leading the rest of the governing board meeting? Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Doan, members of the board, Mrs. Palace Thompson, each year, various internal and external factors are considered during the budget process. Fixed and variable considerations include new funding from the state of Arizona that is based on student enrollment, as well as employer benefit costs, utilities, custodial service costs, and curriculum and student learning initiatives. An ongoing factor for consideration is also the impact of Prop 206 and ongoing minimum wage increases. Each year, the school districts are required by statute to propose and adopt a budget by July 15th, and there is a set and prescribed timeline for the proposal and subsequent adoption, and that's one reason why we are continuing with this agenda item this evening. A public hearing notice is required to be published related to the proposed budget, and the public hearing is convened prior to the proposed budget being adopted on July 15th. And in this case, we'll have our next governing board meeting on July 11th, where we'll ask the governing board to adopt our budget, and we'll be posting our public hearing accordingly. The proposed budget development is a multi-month process that involves input from a 32-member budget team that represents the various district employee groups. This year, the mix of employees included 16 certified, 10 classified, and 6 administrative representatives. The fiscal year 2020 proposed budget includes the governing board approved salary compensation increases that are aligned with the additional state funding for teacher compensation that will be received this year. As previously shared on April 25th, recommendations were made to include in the fiscal year 2020 budget the continuation of the Certified Teacher Function 1000 optional day to provide $399,465 for continued Prop 206 implementation, and to provide $460,350 for an Arizona State Retirement System increase of 0.31%. The budget also includes an estimated $132,500 for increases with our ABM custodial costs, as well as $176,500 for budget allocation to increase funding to our special education community preschool for increased enrollment. For reference tonight, and you may recall from our April 25th meeting, we had compensation increases, and I've included those for your review this evening, and those increases for all of our staff members are included in tonight's proposed budget. The fiscal year 2020 proposed budget also includes retention stipends for certified and classified staff who return to work in the new year. The district's proposed fiscal year 2020 budget includes a 2% inflation funding increase, as well as year 2 of the 20% by 2020 governor's initiative that supports a 5% classroom teacher increase for next year. And the proposed budget also includes the continued restoration of additional district additional assistance. Each year, we propose a budget, and we also estimate a tax rate with the tax rate and levy template that we receive from the Property Tax Oversight Committee and the Maricopa County Education Service Agency. The final tax rate will be set in August by the Maricopa County School Superintendent's Office and may change from our estimate. In the proposed budget, there is an estimated decrease in both the primary and secondary tax rate compared to the last budget revision in fiscal year 2019. The main reason for the decrease, or reasons, is first off, there's a decrease in the qualified tax rate at a state level, and the associated 3.83% increase in statewide property valuations, as well as an 8.7% increase in the Peoria Unified School District's net assessed valuation. In the proposed budget, current year funding continues to be a consideration. In addition, the proposed maintenance and operations budget is $244,070,935 based on 42,722.024 weighted students. The weighted count increases to 48,397.114 when the special education, ELL, and Arizona attendance online add-ons are considered and added to the total student count. So we receive additional funding for those add-ons. The maintenance and operations budget amount also includes the increase to the base support level as a result of the inflation funding, that is 2%, and additional compensation for teachers, that's part of the 20 by 2020. And in addition, the override related to the proposed fiscal year 2020 budget is $27.8 million, the override component. The district additional assistance budget amount for fiscal 2020 is $10,183,496 and includes the continued restoration for the district additional assistance. And it's notable to comment that for 2020, we'll actually receive 2 years in one of the 5 years of district additional assistance or capital restoration, and that's reflected in this proposed budget. The fiscal year 2020 budget classroom site fund is projected to be $21,043,179, which reflects an increase of $11 per student. This funding is also commonly referred to as Prop 301, and it supports our certified staff with both base pay and performance pay. The proposed budget also contains budget amounts for cash-controlled funds and $18.5 million of federal and state grants. The complete population of cash-controlled funds can be found on page 6 of the proposed budget, and some of the notable line items on that page includes $1.1 million for adjacent ways, $3 million for indirect cost, $1.2 million for results-based funding, and $1.9 million for civic center. Administration recommends that the governing board approve the fiscal year 2020 proposed budget as presented. The proposed budget will be brought back to the governing board for adoption on July 11th. This concludes the presentation. I'm available to answer your questions at this time.
All right, do we have any discussion tonight? Ms. Underhill?
We sent you a lot of questions already, but I just wanted to clarify. So we're not approving the budget tonight. We're approving that it be able to go to a hearing. That it be
Mrs.
proposed.
Underhill, yes, tonight
Okay.
we're approving the proposed budget. When we reconvene on July 11th, that will be the chance for the governing board to adopt our budget, and we'll also have a public hearing where our community can certainly provide comment using the 3-minute timeline. And that timeline is set in statute, so we do have a need to adopt by July 15th and to approve rather the proposed budget tonight. There will be no change between the proposed budget and what comes back for adoption on July 11th.
Mr. Sandoval?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Meyer, for the details. And I realize what I'm going to say cannot, well, most likely will not take place in this upcoming academic year, but I would like to prioritize moving forward how we can define a model that provides performance pay to our classified staff. In addition to, and I know we've done this in years past, when we see an increase in the ASR, the retirement system, that we do what we can to ensure that our increases to those individuals who are in the system make that dollar amount a wash, that additional expense that they'll receive on their check, how we can ensure that that's a wash with increases to their salaries, right, on a move-forward basis. So those two items, I think for me, I'd like to maintain top of mind and what we can do to make sure that, those don't negatively impact, our staff, and then how we can create a model for our classified staff from a performance pay regard. But thank you for the details. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. So now what I'm looking for is a motion to approve the publication of the budget, the proposed budget. Do I hear a motion? Okay, I'll make the motion.
Yes. You know what? Do you have that sheet there, Judy? Because it's not up on mine.
I move that we approve the publication of the proposed 2019-2020 maintenance and operations and district additional assistant budget.
Second.
And authorize to hold a public hearing no later than July 15th, 2019.
Second.
All right, motion carries. And at this time, I believe I would like to move that we table items 9, everything under 9 and 10. That would 8, well, we've got some in 8 too. Let's see. Okay, 8.2, 8.4, 8.5, 8.6, 8.7 is already tabled. So then 9.1, 9.2, 10.1, 10.2, and 10.3. So let's table those. I move. I need a second.
I'll second that.
All right. All right, let's take a voice vote where we table all other items on the agenda that have not been done. So, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Yeah. All right, I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Want to voice it? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned at whatever time it is, 8:10. Thank you. Thank you.